Good morning, and welcome to another Seize the Day. Today is kind of drizzly outside and a little overcast, so we're having it inside around my kitchen table. So I'm trusting that you guys are waking up feeling refreshed, ready to begin a new day, and we're thankful for each day that the Lord gives, right? So today is Tuesday, September the 13th, and we get an opportunity to look through some additional passages in a study that we've been doing now in the book of Matthew. And I trust that these studies are building a fund of understanding regarding, who Jesus is. We are starting a new series, and in this series now, we are coming across a number of different passages that are beginning to reveal to us something more about who Jesus is. So in our study, this is a new series that we're calling Misunderstood, and we're looking at a passage that's found in Matthew chapter 13, and it's a passage where we see a number of people looking for something more. So this whole idea of misunderstood is a thought that I had, that what we're finding in a number of these passages is that Jesus is, really displaying, who he is as a person, both in his words and in his actions. And the consequence of that is that people are beginning to respond, and some do that well, right? So we see in Jesus that people are responding by following after him. Others are, curious, but they're not really ready to make that kind of commitment. And yet others, we turn and we see that they are becoming more and more contentious, to the point where they are getting together in real rebellion. So we've looked at a number of passages together, and I thought maybe it would be good if we began to just look again at what some of these passages are saying to us. So we have a passage here that I'll put up a little bit bigger on the screen, where it says, "When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. And coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogues, and they were amazed. 'Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers?' they asked." So Jesus comes back to his hometown in Nazareth, and he does what is his custom, right? He's going to the synagogue, no doubt, that he grew up in. And there he is teaching people as well. And the people were amazed, because not only of his wisdom, but also about the miraculous powers that they have heard about, and perhaps maybe even some had witnessed what Jesus was doing. But notice what happens. These individuals, there's that saying that says familiarity breeds contempt, right? And so here you find this passage, and look what it's teaching us. It says, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? Aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things?" And they took offense at him. See, they're taking offense at Jesus because they're having a hard time trying to understand how Jesus really could be any different from them. They figure, hey, we know where he comes from, we know his parents, we see his kids. Like, come on, he can't be that much different than us. And what happens is that they really miss this opportunity to come to a deeper understanding of what God is doing in the person and the work of Jesus. They're not seeing him as this Messiah that Matthew, up to this point, has been pretty meticulous about letting us know about, right? Going all the way back to the very opening lines in our book, we are introduced to Jesus, who is the son of Abraham, the son of David. The whole genealogy is so that you and I could understand that all of the prophetic words regarding the person of Jesus and this work are now beginning to find fruition in Jesus. It's coming to a head. He is this promised Messiah, and so now he is coming, and people are seeing this authority in his words as well as in his actions. But you notice the people in his own hometown, like the people, his own people, they tend to reject him. I'm reminded of that passage that's found in John chapter 1, where it says, Jesus came unto his own, and his own received him not. And that is how this ministry of Jesus is unfolding. Yes, there are some who are going to hear this word and receive it with great joy. But you're going to see more and more these lines of separation that are coming. All of which is just, again, underscoring what Jesus taught us in the kingdom parables, right? Only the good soil produced any kind of crop, and that was one out of the 4 environments in which the seed, the word of God, fell. Jesus is again telling us, hey, this kingdom of heaven on earth is going to be like the weeds and the wheat, right? There's going to be they're going to grow side by side. It's not going to be until the end of the age that this harvest is going to be, brought into the kingdom. So Jesus is constantly reminding us again of what his objectives are and what he has come to do. And in this, we begin to realize that Jesus' first coming is to really pay the debt that humanity owes. There is this breach that exists between God and man. You see it in the world, right? There's a brokenness that's all around us. And it's part of this good news of the kingdom of heaven that God came to redeem us. And so one of the things that you begin to realize is that Jesus, he's being overlooked. People are waiting for a different kind of king. They're not allowing Jesus the opportunity to really open their eyes to all of the nuances now of what this kingdom of heaven is supposed to be like. And I often think, boy, how often is that the case where we are so grounded in our own assumptions and our own presuppositions? How difficult is it for somebody to rise above that? That's always the challenge, right? And then when you live in a culture that places such a high value on us taking this inward look, not recognizing that our hearts are divided, right? We're told that we have a nature that is in rebellion against God, and that has to be fixed. That needs to be this healing that takes place on side, because otherwise you could be, how about if you had a faulty compass and you're looking at this compass to give you direction, but it's broken. It's giving you false readings. I remember, it sounds, maybe a little trivial, but I remember having an oven where the thermometer was off. And putting something in there, thinking that it was, set at a certain temperature, only to come back and realize that everything had not been cooked. And it was because there was something wrong with the thermometer. It was giving me a wrong reading. It impacted, what I was cooking that day. I mean, it's just an example, right? That you rely on some things that are going to give you a true reading, something that'll help you to point you in right directions. But how about if they don't work? What if this inner voice is really a deceptive voice that is just really about my agenda, pleasing me? then don't you see how that is going to play itself out in all of the decisions that I make, how I engage the world, how I look to the future? So it's not the inward look that is the most important, but it's allowing Jesus to speak into your life. He says, I have the words of life. I have come that you might know the only true God, right? I am now this radiance of his glory. You could see in me all the promises of this Messiah. But he comes to his own hometown, he comes to his own people, and they don't see him. They miss, and they don't understand. And this whole series is all about how do we go from missing it to a place where it could be said that we understood it. That's this journey of faith that I want you to see. So it didn't fare too well for them in Jesus' hometown. Today, I want you to take another look at with me as we look at this next little piece, and this is found in Matthew chapter 14, and in verses 1 and 2 it says, "At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus, and he said to his attendants, 'This is John the Baptist. He has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him.'" So this text now is telling us again, right, in Matthew chapter 14:1, it's coming at a whole nother direction. Now the direction is being given to us regarding this Herod, the Tetrarch, who is hearing this news about Jesus, and he draws a conclusion that this is really all about John the Baptist, who has risen from the dead. Now, from verses 3 to verse 12 in our text, we are now going to be introduced to what has transpired. What do you mean that John the Baptist has died? So Matthew, in this gospel, all of a sudden kind of hits like the pause button and says, hey, let me bring you up to speed. You know, it's kind of like when everybody's sitting around and you're watching a movie, and all of a sudden someone joins in and they kind of missed the first 10 minutes, and you put the movie on pause and you're trying to catch the person up. And if it's my wife, you're doing that 15 times because she says she wants to watch the movie, but she's like going all around the house doing a bunch of other things. And every time she comes back, she goes like, well, what happened? What happened? So it's a joke in our household. Like all the boys, they just shake our heads and we're like, all right. And you give mom the little update, and then she goes flitting around to do something else. So I think maybe she just wants the Reader's Digest version of these movies. In any event, this is what's going on here for Matthew. He's going and he's going to give you some insight into that comment about from Herod, who is saying that Jesus is John the Baptist, resurrected. What is that all about? Well, we read in this gospel here. So I'll just put this up, because as we're really trying to find out who is Jesus really, we begin to hear now from one of the leaders, right? The political, social leaders of the day. This is Herod. He is called the Tetrarch of Galilee. Well, I thought maybe what I had done for many on my sermon on Sunday is I gave them an overview of who Herod really is. And what I started out with, and I'm going to just put up a map, and I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about this, okay? So the first thing I want you to realize is that this Herod that we're talking about is not Herod the Great. Herod the Great is their father. Herod the Great had like 10 wives, 15 children. He wasn't a very nice man. He killed one of his wives and her two sons just in the last moments of his life. Herod was really not a good person. He was the one that sent the Roman troops to kill all the babies in Bethlehem when he thought that this child Jesus, who was born King of the Jews. Remember, the wise men came, seeking the King of the Jews, the one born King of the Jews, and he brought in all the biblical scholars. And you read about this, right, in Matthew chapter 2, and it says in the text that all the scholars got together and they said that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Isn't that interesting? They go back and they look through this Old Testament, and there, sure enough, in the book of Micah, chapter 5, verse 2, there is this passage that reveals that out of Bethlehem, the least of the clans of Israel, shall come forth one who will be shepherd over my people. And so people look to this promise. But as you saw, the people from Jesus' own hometown, they don't recognize that he is the one who is fulfilling these promises. They're looking for more of a leader who's going to come and vanquish, or set them free from Roman occupation. They're kind of they're looking just for like a Moses type who's going to deliver them from their oppressor, not recognizing that the kingdom that Jesus is promising is not of this world. He's introducing us to this kingdom of heaven, but it is yet to be fully realized. And so they miss who Jesus is. And now we're hearing from the political realm, they're misunderstanding this too. In fact, they're going to see Jesus as a threat. One of the things that we realize is Herod had these different sons, but what I wanted to show you in another map here is this was, if you take the green sections out, all the rest were part of Herod's kingdom. So if you look, you can see the Sea of Galilee up here with the river Jordan that flows down and empties into the Dead Sea. And so north of the Sea of Galilee, you have this region, you have the blue and purple here on either side of the Jordan River. And then you have this more salmon color here that was also where you have Jerusalem, Judea. These were all parts of the region now. But all of this was part of Herod's kingdom. Well, when Herod dies, he divided it up to three of his sons. This brown was given to Philip. The blue and purple was given to Antipas, and the salmon color was given to Archelaus, another one of his sons. What's interesting about this map, and that I'm just going to take a minute so that you can kind of absorb this a little bit, is that when Herod died, each one of these boys wanted that kingdom for themselves. And so this is where the story gets kind of interesting. And I'll relate that to this whole question about who is Jesus, because what you find is that these brothers are vying for who is going to be king. So in the text that we just looked at in Matthew chapter 14, what you find is Herod is introduced as a tetrarch, which is really the word for a prince. It's one who is given like a quarter of a kingdom. So they all wanted to be king, not tetrarchs. And so there began to be this vying for, this this role of king. So, what takes place then, and what takes place here, is that you find Archelaus, after his father passes, there was an anti-government kind of revolt that Archelaus sent troops down, and they wound up killing over 1,500 Israelites on that day, and it created such an uproar. But Archelaus took that as a badge of honor, and what Archelaus did was he went back up to Rome and began to use that as a bargaining chip with Caesar Augustus, basically saying, hey, Caesar, look, I got your back. I'm the kind of guy that you want to be heading over, your territories. So, my father was king. You should make me king. Well, around the same time, Antipas decides that's not going to happen. So he goes up to Rome, and now they're getting into this big dispute about who was to be king. And to be even a little bit more disclosing, when before Herod died, he had already had a will. Now, we learn a lot of this by a Jewish historian by the name of Josephus. But Josephus tells us in his writings that Herod had made a will where he gave all of the kingdom to Antipas. So Antipas, who, by the way, was 16 years old at the time when this will was made, Antipas thinks, hey, I'm going to get all of this kingdom. Like, he wants to be king. It's not really sure that he wants to do king, right? Like, it's more about the power. It's about the privilege. It's about the authority. It's about the resources. And so Antipas, he goes up and he makes his case, but it's like Caesar Augustus is saying, look, I basically had enough of this. So what he does is he divides the properties amongst all of them. So they each have a piece. But here's where it gets really good, because the pieces, when Antipas goes to Rome, on one of these visits, his brother Philip comes along, and he brings his wife, and his wife is named Herodias. And Antipas begins to have an affair with Philip's wife. And as we're going to read in the rest of this story, it becomes a pivotal point, because it was a point of contention between John the Baptist and King Antipas. And the reason for that was because John the Baptist was saying it was unlawful for Antipas to have his brother Philip's wife. So what did he do? He put him in prison. And when he put him into prison, he bound him there to just kind of quiet that voice, kind of let him know, like, who's in charge here. And so now John the Baptist is in prison. You remember, word came to Jesus that he was in prison. And John wanted to know if everything that he had been doing, was for naught, because he was looking at Jesus saying, man, are you the one that really was to come? Because John also had probably in his head that there was going to be a different kind of king that would come. And now he's hearing that Jesus is welcoming, the likes of Matthew, a tax collector, eating with them, calling them, that Jesus is healing Gentiles, that this word of God is being preached, but he's not quite seeing the kind of deliverance that they thought a Moses type figure was going to bring. So now you can imagine how John is in prison and all this stuff is going on in his head, and he sends his disciples back up, and Jesus says, look, tell John what you see and hear, because all of this is demonstrating that I am fulfilling the call of what the Messiah was to come and do. And then he also praised John. Remember, he said there was no one born of woman like John. And he praised John. But in this case now, the political environment was such that Antipas didn't really like what John was up to. So let me bring you back to this map, because now it gets a little bit more interesting. What you find in this map, see the brown piece and that upper bluish piece here. The border that existed between these brothers became really contentious, because when Herodias leaves her husband Philip and Antipas takes her as his own, it causes a huge civil war between the two of them. But Antipas was given was given a wife by the king of Nabatea, which is at the bottom part here. You see this in this tan color. So the king of Nabatea turns around, gives to Antipas his daughter as a bride, and this territory here known as Perea. And in that territory, he's given that territory, and now when Antipas takes Philip's wife, he sends back the king's daughter. So in essence, he is just divorcing her, sending her back to her father, and that became a point of contention, where now the Nabateans were at war with Antipas over this tryst that he had engaged by bringing back their daughter and marrying Herodias. And all the while, Archelaus is trying to use all of this to his advantage, so he continues to vie for this kingdom. So Antipas, on numerous fronts, is having to contend with all of this revolt and at the same time trying to please everyone. It just doesn't change, does it? Do you notice this? Like, it never changes. It's always the same thing. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. It's power, it's money, it's land. It's power. It's always the same thing. No matter the ages in which we live, you just change the dates and you change the personalities, but it all boils down to the same. The contention that's in the world are usually centered around these kinds of things. And it's in this world then that Jesus is coming. So Jesus is coming to his own, but his own are not receiving him. He comes to reveal the secrets of this kingdom, and even the world at large is set up against him. And so I want to take more of our time together by unpacking, what is taking place, because if the Jews, they misunderstood, right? The Jews, they were looking for another king. Here you have the king Herod Antipas, who wants to be king and is doing everything he can to silence the voices of those who are proclaiming God's rule. And tell me that hasn't changed over all these millennia. That the kingdoms of this world and the kingdom of God, they are always at war with one another. That goes back to that parable again of what Jesus said to us about the wheat and the weeds. There is this contentiousness, but God in his grace is seeking to provide opportunity for people to know who he is, to be able to make those kinds of decisions, to move into this kingdom that he is establishing on earth. And that is what is going to bring the settledness in one's heart. It's what gives rest to one's soul. But you can see, if your eyes aren't open, then you're not seeing. If your ears aren't open, you're not hearing. It's not that Jesus isn't communicating. It's that people's presumptions, people's own ambitions, aspirations, they get in the way, and they're not willing to bow this knee to Jesus. So we'll spend more time tomorrow, and we'll take a little bit more look at this story. But I hope that a little bit of that background gives the flavor of why Herod might be so paranoid that he's putting John in prison, because the people are really beginning to respond to John's message. And if Jesus is falling in that suit, what is that going to say about Jesus then? What are they going to do to him? This is almost like a little hint of what's coming down the road. And one day Jesus will appear before this Herod Antipas. And that's not going to go too well. So these things shouldn't catch us by surprise. They just are meant to give us an understanding again in regards of this spiritual war that you and I are engaged in. But never forget, my friends, that greater is he that is in us than he that's in the world. That this divine power that we have received enables us to participate in God's divine nature. And we are being called upon to let this light shine in the midst of the broken world that we live in. So you go out today, seize the day. Continue to read here in Matthew chapter 14. And Lord willing, tomorrow will come and we'll have this opportunity to spend some time together. So God bless you, and really thanks for being a part this morning. God bless.